need steel for that. That's a pistol, though. No thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. Legion tattoo. So that thing will actually be better. I need 8 silicon blocks, though, which I think I can't get at the moment. Right, let's see. Do I have a few more stacks here? I have 2 bikes. Right, so that is the one I'm not using. Probably doesn't make much of a difference. Corner. The corner. I am parched. Okay, then we need to repair some shit. Let's repair. Oh. Oh. Can we do anything? Right. Okay, so what I was talking about is I saw an ornithopter somewhere around there. Sorry. This. Right, and there was someone in there, but I didn't go through last time, so I think it is this. So, let's see here. Entering Eastern Shield Wall. Nice. It looks awesome. Bit like these hidden Buddha statues in, like, what was it, Afghanistan or Jordan. Seen pictures, they look really cool. The Sietch. Nothing here.
Eyes on target.
Oh, there's something here. Sand trout leathers. So sand trout, I think, are baby worms, basically. Although no one does know the connection. Centaurs are basically these small things. They're very small, basically just yay big. As a friend of mine would say. And I think when Licho II becomes the God Emperor, he gets covered in sand shrouds and lives for 1,000 years, thousands and thousands of years. Spoiler alert. The carvings in the doors depict a series of planets. A solid projection of handprint flickers in front of the door. Place your hand on the projection. The whir of machinery begins from the walls around the door.
We are the people of Misr. We have known flight and death. The young go on that our people shall not die. Where did our flight begin?
So that was the last one. I want to say...
You have failed the proving, young. We are the... You have failed the proving, young. We are the people of Misr. We have known flight and death. The young go on that our people shall not die. Where did our flight begin?
I thought this was the last place.
We grew soft, Wali. So God brought us the weight of kindliness to prepare for the typhoon. Name the planet where we lost our way. On our wanderings, we came to a planet devoid of gods, where war was constant and violence was religion. Have you learned its name, Wali?
Is it this one?
You have failed. We are the people of Mist. We grew soft on our wanderings. You have failed.
Okay, it was Lusa Secundus. So they came there after it came there, because Lusa Secundus used to be a beautiful planet.
The young go on that we grew on our one. We remember the slave cribs where we were held, weeded out, persecuted. Do you remember too, Wali?
No.
The thread of the past was carried by word until we found the poison drug. One of the cursed planets was a blessing for our Sayadina. You have failed. We are the people. We grew on our wandering. We remember the thread of the past was carried by word until we found so many planets across so many centuries. Our people broke apart, split, reformed. Some planets we barely remember at all. A long journey, young Wali. But we are almost home. Just one last place of suffering, where our children were taken and made slaves. You have failed the...
Fuck me.
We grew on our wandering. We remember the thread of the past was carried by word. You have failed. We grew on our wandering. We remember the thread of the past was carried by word. Until so many planets, a long journey, young Wali. But we are almost home. Just what the time of Mihna has ended. Young Wali, pass within and seek your Ummah.
These were all questions from when you went to the 7 trials. If you wrote down what she said each time, you get this. But I mean, it's not difficult to get through it. Like, you can always just jump back in. It doesn't punish you for getting it wrong, basically, which is refreshingly easy then to solve it, but also...
The path of the Zensuni Exodus is rare and hidden knowledge.
Some might say too
easy.
Masquerade
cultist. Who are you? What do you seek here?
Trials of Akal brought me here in search of the Fremen.
The Trials of Akal? Knowledge of that name lends you credibility. But you seek the Fremen? You must know they're dead.
I've seen them in my spice-fueled dreams. I've seen enough to doubt that they are really dead.
That security door is encoded for Fremen biometrics. How did you bypass it?
I just opened. I don't know how.
Perhaps we can help each other.
Why? What do you want out of this place?
I'm a scholar of Fremen's social, cultural, and philosophical constructs, both past and present. They fascinate me. And I've studied the layout of this place. It's a death trap. Between the Mosqueret trying to blow their way in and the structural damage left by the Sardaukar, the whole thing could come crashing down.
The moment demands cooperation, I have your back.
And I have yours. The name's Ari.
You work for Ari.
I serve no one. Let's say I'm something of a freebooting academic. And like you, my interests lie in discovering the true extent of the Fremen eradication. Or more to the point, discovering if that eradication even occurred.
If they're not dead, where are they?
South, maybe. Arrakis is a big place. And while we like to think we're at the center of all things, in relative terms, the sphere of Imperial influence is rather small. They could be anywhere beyond the deep desert or the Tanzaruft, as it's known to the Ikhwan Bedouin.
Shaddam says dead. Do you say different?
Not entirely. I'm sure the Sardaukar massacred them by the thousands. This Sietch bears evidence of that. But you're right. I don't believe the Imperial account. And I'm hoping the truth, or part of it, awaits us inside. If we survive.
Survive. I don't anticipate enemies. This looks amazing. I love it. I love this a lot. This looks really cool. This looks really, really cool, actually. You see the worms there? Try loot. The light from the top. The outside. Jumped on. Nothing. Down. There's what's it called? Stairs here. That. Quick look around. Right, Ari, let's go inside.
Did you encounter the Mosqueret on your way here? There's some kind of cult. Worm worshippers based out of an abandoned power station far to the west. It's odd to see them this far east. But if they found this place, they'll be coming.
Yeah, so this is how the Fremen lived.
Down here, water discipline would finally be relaxed. Visitors could shed their dusty still suits and find refreshment.
Very cool. Yeah, I love the architecture. I love, it's very similar to the movies, and I love it there too. Right.
Looks like there's no other way forward. I hope you brought your cutter ray.
Oh my god, if you don't have your cutter ray. You're effed.
We'll probably find that a lot of corridors and subchambers are collapsed and impassable. Some would have been brought down by the Sardaukar to deny key areas and resources to any survivors. Others would have been brought down by the Fremen themselves. Invade an assault force or channel them to a kill zone. The Fremen were known to keep large nests of scorpions in order to harvest their venom for blades. That's a door I don't want to open.
Right.
Strange to think these corridors once echoed with the hopes and dreams of a lost multitude. Mothers, fathers, and children beyond count. And now, only silence. A silence this rock hasn't known in 10,000 years.
So way ahead. Let's check out the other ways just first. And I'm far away. It must be very far. Start here. Okay, let's check out this.
Through here, I believe, and likely an armory. It's probably for the best that this way is impassable.
Is it? Is it though? I don't think it is.
Don't touch the dead. It's standard Sardaukar doctrine to booby-trap the bodies of their fallen enemy. Sietch power plant would probably be through there, and the air filtration systems beyond that. Many of these doors also led to exterior passages where the water keepers would have maintained external dew collectors and wind traps. An extensive and lossless pipe system would deliver the gathered water to various catch basins and cisterns throughout the Sietch. However, all water would eventually return to the main reservoir.
Man, this is fucking big. I mean, there's tenth of
Our first
thousands
goal
of
on
each of these.
Arrakis is grassland provinces. We will start with these mutated poverty grasses. When we have moisture locked in grasslands, we'll move on to start upland forests, then a few open bodies of water, small at first, and situated along lines of prevailing winds with wind-trap moisture precipitators spaced in the lines to recapture what the wind steals. We must create a true sirocco, a moist wind, but we will never get away from the necessity for wind traps. This ecological transformation of Arrakis relies upon us controlling 3% of the energy surface. Only 3% to start a self-sustaining system. Learn this lesson well. Our transformation begins in the plantations of the south and proceeds in simple steps to begin. Bind the dunes using grass. Secondly, create deep plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be tested on how well you have learned to recognize the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
Grass, planting, shelter, rock, sand, tree. Narrate, bind, animal, cavern. Cavern, think the first thing was
To begin, bind the dunes using grass. Secondly,
Okay, so
create deep
grass.
plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be tested on how well you have learned to recognize the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
Bind. That.
To begin, bind the dunes using grass. Secondly, create deep plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be tested on how
Bind
well
wind.
you have learned to recognize the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
Grass, bind, wind. So probably this
Very
is
good.
bind, wind, grass. And that's wrong. Bind dune using grass.
To begin, bind the dunes using grass.
Bind dune.
Secondly, create deep plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be tested on how well you have learned to recognize the
Let's go.
language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
8. Shelter. So I think shelter is the second, right? And then create. So
To begin, bind the dunes using grass. Secondly, create deep plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be tested on how well you have learned to recognize the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
planting. I think it's planting.
Brilliant work.
To begin, bind the dunes using grass.
Yes.
Secondly, create deep plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be
Burrowing
tested on how
animals
well you have learned
aerate
to
the
recognize
soil.
the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons,
Aerate.
and the door to the future will open.
Aerate soil. No soil. I think the animals the first one. So now if you just go through the last one, it should pop up if these two are correct, then it will work. No, incorrect.
To begin, bind the dunes using grass.
Okay.
Secondly, create deep plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be tested on how well you have learned to recognize the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
Introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. animals and we have aerate. So obviously these two are wrong. Introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil.
To begin, bind the dunes using grass. Secondly, create deep plantings in the shelter of the downwind face. Finally, introduce burrowing animals to aerate the soil. You will be tested on how well you have learned to recognize the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
Just gonna move this over one. And go through this to see if it sets it off. Doesn't. So if we do introduce burrowing animals. Aerate the soil. So we have shelter now. Rock. No. Sand. Tree. No. That's animal. Cavern. No. Aerate. Yes. Bind. No. Cavern. Dormant. Fire. Send something here.
To begin, bind the dunes using grass.
Bind dunes.
Secondly, create deep plantings in
Plant,
the shelter of the
shelter,
downwind
downwind.
face. Finally, introduce burrowing
Animal,
animals to aerate
aerate.
the soil. You will be tested on how well you have learned to recognize the language of the ecological transformation. Remember your lessons, and the door to the future will open.
That's animal. That is aerate.
Congratulations. You shared
I
knowledge
used the
of
wrong
Fremen
sign.
pre-adolescent.
Right, so there was sand. So there was animal, aerate, sand. Sand. Okay. Oh yeah, I used the wrong sign, so that obviously didn't work.
Good work. This must be the way.
Too tired. Too old for this shit. Okay.
That's the masquerade. I was hoping it would take them longer to arrive in force. We better hurry up and be done with our business here.
I really love the architecture. I would like to be able to create a base in kind of this, with these colors and layouts and different parts, building parts. That would be cool.